1. I used to volunteer at a historic village. While most of our events were historical reenactments, some were just for fun, and to bring in revenue. The biggest of these was our Halloween haunted hayride. One year I was stationed at the fire pit at the end of the ride. There were spooky activities in addition to the hayride, and one of them was storytelling in the carriage house by the pit. My best friend was also there, and we were supposed to entertain the guests as they waited for the next storytelling to begin. My friend was a zombie, and I was her victim. She murdered me several times that evening, and we really had a great time doing it. As fun as it was also physically taxing, and we both needed a break at one point. My friend suggested, after the next group, instead of killing me, she would chase me to the other side of the carriage house, where we could rest and catch our breath for a few minutes. It sounded like a good idea, and I agreed. It was very dark on the other side of the carriage house, and that area was not part of the event. I did not see that there were a couple of bricks on the ground, and I tripped over one of them. I started to fall and could not catch myself. I was only about 2 feet from the house, right by the corner. By all laws of physics, my face should have struck the corner of the brick building. It is very difficult to explain what happened next. I suddenly wasn't falling anymore, and I was about 6 inches away from the other wall of the house, the wall that connected to the wall where I tripped. I hadn't caught myself, and I hadn't been able to jump to the side. It was as though I skipped just a few seconds and had no memory of what stopped me from hitting the building. My friend who had seen me fall thought I had hit it. She even grabbed me and hugged me before I told her that I was fine. So it wasn't just a case of me misjudging my distance from the building. Whatever it was that stopped me from falling, whether it was a glitch in the Matrix, angelic intervention, or whatever else it could have been, saved me from what might have been a serious injury. I will always be grateful. 2. I'm a 20-year-old female who grew up in a small town in the eastern United States. I left to live in the city after I moved out of my parents' home at the age of 16, which places me in the city in which all of these events took place. I'd been working since I was 14 years old and supporting myself, skipping from job to job every year because no company would take a young worker such as myself seriously, due to most individuals my age being behind a few years in maturity. After bailing on my job at Chipotle, I landed a job at an up-and-coming chicken restaurant. Even though I was young, they hired me immediately and took me seriously. I have never felt more at home and been treated with more respect than at this store, and I still call it home today. Everyone is open, supportive, and hard-working there. That is why I never would have expected the event that took place to take hold. 2 years ago, when the restaurant first opened, a manager named Chris was the main closing manager. At the time, I would close 5 to 6 nights a week while working 50 or more hours. Needless to say, Chris and I got to spend a lot of time together, even though most of the time the new restaurant would be too busy to talk during the day. After close, everyone would always leave their headsets on to chat, or we would do so while cleaning. To describe Chris, he was a short, round man, laid back, loved his family, knew everyone, and would always look out for others. When I say he knew everyone, I mean everyone. He had helped to start up Tom and Shay with Barbara from Shark Tank. For those who may know the American television show and restaurant, I confided in Chris a couple of nights when I wasn't feeling my best, and he would always try to make sure I felt better by the end of our conversation. I can even recall a time when he was brought to tears when I told him about how my old best friend, who we will call S, has started dabbling in pills and other drugs again, because her life wasn't going too well. Him and her worked together for only a month, and after I talked to him about her, he started tearing up. He said that he felt like no one deserved to feel like that was an option, and he hoped that S would clean up soon. Chris would bring his wife into work along with his son to eat some nights, and they appeared to be an average, happy family. I honestly believe that this man was very caring, but something must have changed. After working at the restaurant with him for about 9 months or so, he was transferred to another location. Everyone was sad to see him go, Made sure to get in a hug or two. I saw him every now and then after that night, when he would return to the home store to bring his family out to eat, and another time when him and I helped to open up another restaurant together. I didn't notice anything different about him each of those times. He was fired about 3 months after we opened up the new place for unknown reasons to me. I think it's because he would have been a better crew member than higher up management in my personal opinion, but that is just my best guess. I never saw Chris after he was fired. Today I was at work after returning a month ago from my trip to travel the United States of America in my van. I had been gone from work for some time. I was joking around with an employee who has been there for even longer than I have, and we were fixing this disco ball we put up in the store over a year ago. Next to it was a hard hat, such as those in construction wear. We keep it in the store lobby with everyone's signature who helped open the joint. It had Chris's signature on it, and my coworker went pale. He brought it up to me, asked me if I knew what happened to Chris. I assumed maybe they had bad blood and told him no. My coworker paused for a minute. Chris shot his wife and then killed himself. Now this coworker and I have very dark senses of humor, so my first instinct was to laugh and tell him to fuck off. He didn't laugh back, and I knew it had to be true. I felt my heart start to skip out of its regular rhythm. Chris, the man who I knew to be so caring, turns out he had snapped. His wife, who had been with him since high school, was leaving him, and he couldn't take it. While their son was at work, Chris and his wife got into an argument. It ended when he fatally shot her, and then proceeded to turn the gun on himself. The son left behind isn't 18 yet, and has no family around due to his grandmother's passing only a week prior. I think he's finishing his senior year with friends because he has been through so much. And I'm thankful that he isn't lost in the system after a huge event in his life such as that, and has friends to turn to. I've been reading police reports all morning, whenever I got the chance at work, and I'm deeply in shock. At work there is a photo of him in the office next to the other managers gathering dust that reads, "Happily married to the love of my life and high school sweetheart. We are blessed with a beautiful son, life's gift. So make every day count, one love." It's creepy to think how much of him is still around even though he is gone. His fingerprints could be found in that store, I'm sure of it, if you look hard enough. It's awakening to realize that people can go from being fine to just snapping under the stress of life. It's intense to think about how someone can be no longer with us, but the effects of what they've done linger. I just want to clarify that although we became friends, I don't condone his actions. I resent him deeply for them. Not only did he murder himself and his wife, but he's taken the life of his son too. That child will never be able to live the life so many of us are blessed with. And with that I say this: take time to make sure your family is doing okay. Take time to make sure you're doing okay. Be careful. And be thankful for what you have, because life's a gift. Make every day count. 3. I am one of those people who tends to attract the paranormal. All my life I have experienced everything from haunted houses to haunted schools, to seeing random shadows and figures in random places. I can tell story after story. However, I will limit myself to 2. Both stories happen within the last couple of months. To the best of my knowledge, they are unrelated. Number 1. Every summer I meet up with many long-time friends to have a picnic. Every year we have the picnic at this complex that has a number of theaters and amphitheaters. It also has a fancy restaurant, as well as many picnic areas and hiking trails. This year I had brought one of my best friends from college. So a while into the picnic, we both had to use the restroom. The restroom is located under the restaurant. It is meant for the general public, and is extremely creepy. The best way I can describe this room is grey. The floor is grey, the walls are grey, Even the single long fluorescent light at the back of the room seems to emit a dull grey light. My friend is one of those people who loves to sing. She sings when she's happy, sad, and apparently when she's creeped out. We went in and did our business. I could hear her singing in the stall next to mine. When I was leaving, I prepared myself to wait, due to the fact that I could still hear her singing in the stall. I walked over to the sinks and squeezed by this lady to get to the other sink. I washed my hands, dried them, and leaned against the wall listening to my friend hum from within the stall. I wished silently that my friend would hurry, as I was becoming quite creeped out. I glanced nervously over at the other lady who was finishing drying her hands. All of a sudden, the lady whirled around and glared at me. Her skin was wrinkled and pale. Her eyes were pure black and deep-set, and her black hair was straggly and nappy. She began shouting my name in a deep, husky voice. She grabbed my elbow and got closer to my face. I froze as I felt the blood run from my face. I can honestly say that at that moment, I felt my sanity slip. I jerked my elbow free and staggered back. I glanced behind me, at the door, and back at the lady. When my eyes focused back on her, I did not see the horrible glare. Instead, I saw my friend's concerned face. She was still shouting my name, but it was in her own voice. I no longer heard the singing from the other stall. My friend asked if I was all right, to which I replied, "We need to leave, now." I turned and left before she even had the chance to speak. Outside, I told her what had happened, and she told me that she looked in the mirror, and the face looking back wasn't hers. She became very creeped out, but didn't want to say anything for fear of scaring me. Needless to say, next picnic, I can hold it. Number 2. One day my aunt arrived home to her 2-year-old shouting at her to come see. He told her that I was playing with him downstairs. Seems normal, right? See, the problem was that at the time I was in another country, so my aunt followed him, feeling absolutely confused. He stops at the couch and pats the cushion, looks at her and says, I guess she left." A few weeks later, another aunt of mine was in the store and looked down the aisle, only to see an exact clone of me when I was like 5. A few weeks after that, my grandmother came out on her back patio in the morning to find 2 child-sized handprints. The creepy thing is, when I was very young, we built a second driveway and placed our hands in the cement to make handprints. The handprints look uncannily like mine. To be honest, the second story scares me more, because of the simple fact that there was something going on. And there was another me out there somewhere doing something. I assumed that it wasn't evil, because I was playing with my cousin, and he did not seem afraid. But still, it's very unsettling. 4. I'm a 22-year-old guy from Switzerland. I live in a small city called Brig. The special thing about it is that I pretty much have all the stores I need at my doorstep. But at the time, I only lived 10 minutes away from nature. To the south of the city are mountains as well as the Simplon Pass. My aunt has a wooden house up there. As a kid, I loved to be there. We went up there at least once a month. The way the house was built was just beautiful, and it was great for taking a break from life. But I remember the day my aunt told me we couldn't be at the house on Wednesdays. So the story goes that every Wednesday the house gets visited by the family that built the house in the 1850s. Our neighbors would see lights turning on and hear crying sounds while nobody was in the house. But only on Wednesdays. So my aunt decided to never be there on Wednesdays. I didn't believe it. Even as a kid, I'm an atheist and I never had any paranormal experiences in my life. So the years passed and I turned 22 last week. I asked my aunt to borrow the house for just a little birthday party. I didn't want a regular birthday party, but something special. And up there in the mountains, with clean air and beautiful views in a cozy wooden house, Perfect. I didn't want a big party or something, just a good time with my friends. So she gave me the keys. We drove out on Monday and had a good time. It was Tuesday evening now. We were sitting outside, but it started to get cold. So we went into the house and watched some movies. Logan is great, by the way. And we were starting to get tired and went to bed. Suddenly I woke up. I looked at my phone to check the time. It was 2:30 a.m. It was Wednesday. One of my friends was laying on the floor on an air mattress. The other two friends were sleeping in a separate room. I looked down at him and he was already looking at me with big eyes. "You heard it too, right?" I didn't really hear it, but it probably woke me up. I could see a faint light under the door. I got up and opened the door to see which one of my friends was still up. As soon as I opened the door, the lights went off, just like that. I walked around the house and searched for someone. Finally, I went into the room my other friends were in. I opened the door and they were both asleep. What the fuck is going on? I still didn't think about the whole Wednesday thing. It didn't come to mind at all. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I thought my friend came out of his room to see where I was. I turned around to talk to him, but I was alone. I was getting freaked out at this point. I decided to go back into my room where my other friend was in. He was on his phone. He put the phone away and asked me which one of the guys was still up. "They're both sleeping, dude." He looked at me confused and asked, "So who was it then?" I just shrugged and went back to bed. About 10 minutes later, we heard talking right in front of the door. It was a female voice, so it couldn't be our friends. My friend and I, both still awake, were just looking at each other while listening. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but she sounded like a child. After around 2 minutes, it stopped. We didn't hear or experience anything for the rest of the night. The next day, we drove back home. I thought about the things that happened that night. And when it came to my mind, the story my aunt told me, did that really happen? I was searching for an explanation. My friends didn't know about the story, so why would they prank me like this? And even if they did, how did they manage it? There was no way for one of them to turn the lights on or off and go back to bed without walking into me. And the footsteps. I turned so fast that there was no time to get away from them. So that was that. I will never go to this house again. Don't care which day of the week it is. 5. So my grandmother had recently passed away. I can relate that some families do not do things traditionally. That would be us. On my mother's side, there isn't anything traditional about it. Some people bring food, etc. After getting our bellies full, just the family had the night to disperse stories about the one who had passed. Again, it was the passing of my grandmother, so we began with drinks in hand, about her life experiences. Myself, I personally enjoyed this part of the night because I got to hear stories of her that I had never heard before. She was a stern old bitch and would never let anyone know different if she wasn't. The only other pieces that I could reclaim was that she was an amazing cook, stuck to her ways like an old geezer, and was quick to temper. My grandmother had worked the graveyard shift and had to walk a few streets over to get to her home at the time. She was going about her way home after talking to a few people from work. She had told me about this experience when I was a child. She loved her black velvet on Tuesdays and Thursdays only. Later in years, for myself, she was the most fun or seemingly not as much of a bitch. Otherwise, she would criticize your every thought, movement, generally your life. Getting back on subject, she was walking home on a full moon's night and swore to me that something had grabbed her foot from the ground as she was walking. Did I forget to mention it was a graveyard that she had to enter and exit to reach her street? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Scary Subscriber Stories 58. Big thanks to everybody who sent their stories in to me for use in this video. If you do have a story yourself you'd like to share, I would love to have it. just send it over to kingofthecities@gmail.com. Don't worry about the writing, don't worry about the subject matter. It can be funny, scary, glitch, paranormal, whatever you like, I'll find a home for it. All I ask is that you put in the subject line what kind of a story it is. It's just easier for me when I'm sorting things. You know, apart from the spooky visitors on Wednesdays, I think that house in, was it story number 4? The one in Switzerland, it's probably my ideal place for a getaway. A lot of wood, a lot of nature, peaceful. And I really need to do that one day. Just go. I have to get a passport first. But, oh well. Okay, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.